Well, thank you all. Appreciate Secretary Clinton coming. It was a long day for her, but she stayed to the end, and I didn't hear a single word of complaint from her. Heard a little bit from some of the other folks on the dais, but not from her. She's an important witness. You can't investigate Benghazi without talking to the Secretary of State at all relevant times. But as I said this morning, she's one important witness out of what's now more than 50 important witnesses, and there are a couple dozen left to go. So in terms of conclusions drawn, I don't draw conclusions until the end, and there are more witnesses to talk to. So from my standpoint, we keep going on until we're able to interview all the witnesses that we think have access to relevant information. Importantly, access the documents. I did tell you in my opening, count how many times you hear my colleagues to the left ask the executive branch to produce documents. I counted 0. So the 6 of us, 7 of us would be much closer to writing that final report if we could get just a little bit of help in gaining access to the document. So with that,
what did you find the most revelatory piece of information?
You know, everybody's going to have their own perspective on that. I have a very different interpretation of the phrase personal review than the ARB did. I think personal review means exactly what it says, personal review. We had a lot of Q&A this morning about specific security incidences and specific requests, and her response was, I have people and processes in place for that. That's fine. That's a fair answer. But you also need to be prepared to answer why you have people and processes in place for security, but people and processes were not in place for milk, diesel fuel, gasoline, fish, or the drivel of Sidney Blumenthal. I think some of Jimmy Jordan's questioning, well, when you say new today, I mean, we knew some of that already. We knew about the emails. In terms of her testimony, I don't know that she testified that much differently today than she has the previous time she's testified. So I'd have to go back and look at the transcript.
Chairman, if that's the case, people, begs the question, why spend 9 hours on it if you don't think that she produced anything that you hadn't heard before?
Well, I've got to go back and look at the other transcripts to see whether or not she said anything different or not. I just tell you this, you have to talk to the Secretary of State, and you have to talk to her after you gain access to her documents. So I think the better question, Dana, with all due respect, is how the previous committees were able to write their reports without access to what we had access to. That, to me, is a better question.
Mr. Gowdy, did you gain credibility today, do you think, with this committee?
How would I be able to answer that question? I don't know. I thought these were pretty credible folks before we started today, so I don't know. That's up to y'all to report that. I thought it was a constructive interaction, and I was trying to be a little slow with the gavel so she wouldn't get cut off. We tried hard not to cut her off.
Do you feel you got dragged down into a sideshow surrounding Sidney Blumenthal, or do you think the level of focus on him was
you know what? I think rather than folks asking me why I am talking about Sidney Blumenthal, I think the better question is, why was she listening to Sidney Blumenthal? The only reason his name is coming up is because he was the most prolific emailer to her on the topic of Libya and Benghazi. I didn't say advisor, I said emailer. So you're going to have to ask her why this torrent of information, which we now know he didn't even draft. It was drafted by a guy named Tyler Drumheller. I do know this, that when our ambassador had just been, his papers had just been accepted, and he made a specific request for more security, on exactly that day, he's being asked to read and respond to an email from Sidney Blumenthal. I mean, you've got to ask her that. I tried today, and maybe you're a better questioner. That's a question for her. I mean, flip it around. We get a tranche of emails, and the most prolific emailer to her on the subject matter is someone who doesn't work for the State Department, doesn't work for the United States government, was expressly rejected by the President or the White House when he tried to work for her. How do you not talk to both him and her about why they were still communicating? Look, she's scrubbing the identifying information when she forwards it. I mean, what does that tell you? So,
Are you
All right, thank you.
that she did most of her business off email?